Assalamualaikum and welcome back to my channel. If you are new, my name is Arina, and if you are coming back, I hope you all are doing well. In today's video, I am going to review and also did a look for each palette. I'm going to compare the O.TWO.O 9-pan eyeshadow palette with the FOCALLURE 9-pan eyeshadow palette. These palettes are fairly new, especially FOCALLURE 9 pans. So if you are interested to know my thoughts and want to know how I create this eye look, keep on watching. Okay, we're gonna do one look on each eye using different palettes. So on my right side, I'm gonna use the O.TWO.O 9-pan eyeshadow palette. I did a separate video reviewing this palette. You can click up here to watch it. And also on my left side, I'm gonna use the FOCALLURE 9-pan eyeshadow palette. The O.TWO.O eyeshadow palette is in the shade O2 Almond Cocoa, and the FOCALLURE 9-pan eyeshadow palette is in the shade nsdd. I did use the pinkflash concealer and use it as an eyeshadow primer. That is what I usually do, and I'm going to use like this similar shape brushes to do these eye looks. Firstly, with the O.TWO.O eyeshadow palette, I'm taking the second shade from the second row, this one right here, and press it on the outer and inner corner. From the FOCALLURE palette, it's the second last shade from the last row here, and doing the same thing, just pressing it on the outer and inner corner of the lid. As you can see, the FOCALLURE one has a more warmer undertone, whereas the O.TWO.O one is a deeper brown. I'm gonna deepen the outer corner using the shade from the O.TWO.O palette. From the first lane, this brown shade here. Actually, this brown pulls more red instead of like a true brown. So since the FOCALLURE palette doesn't have a deep brown shade like the O.TWO.O, this is the O.TWO.O palette. So as you can see, from the FOCALLURE palette, the deepest shade is a burgundy red shade, has a purple tone, and from the O.TWO.O palette, the deepest shade is a brown shade. They don't match. So I'm gonna do is look for the most similar shade from the O.TWO.O palette. I'm gonna press the shade on my outer and inner corner, just to deepen it up. And on this side, I'm gonna do the same thing using the same brush. I just wipe it off and then taking this shade and pressing it on the outer and inner corner as well, just to give the eyeshadow a little bit more depth. And to blend this eyeshadow, I'm gonna take the first shade from the O.TWO.O palette from the second row to blend it out on the crease area. On the FOCALLURE side, I'm going to take the third shade from the first row and doing the same thing to blend it out. Leaving the center bare because we're going to place a shimmery shade there. The center, I'm going to put a glittery shade, and before that, I want to prime the eyelids using a primer. I just use this one from NYX. It's the pigment primer, so dabbing it on both sides. Okay, for the shimmery shade on the O.TWO.O side, I'm going to pick up the center shade from the first row using my finger. That is what I like to do with almost all the shimmery shade. So just tapping it on the center like that. This is my favorite shade from the palette, so pretty. It has a yellow shift to it. And from the FOCALLURE palette, I'm going to pick up the first shade from the first row, also a shimmer shade. As you can tell, this one doesn't have a strong yellow shift. It's just like a silvery white shade. So yeah, this is what the eye looks so far, and I'm going to blend the outer part here where the two shade meets so that this one looks seamless. Same goes to this one, and I'll be right back. And on this eye, the same thing, pressing it on the outer and also in the corner. I'm leaving the center bare because we're going to put the shimmery shade just like the upper lid, and I'm going to blend this out using the crease shade here, first shade from the second row. Did do a wing liner and also finish up some blending and the under eyes off camera. I did put on mascara as well, so this is what they look like side by side. Obviously, if you look it closely, you can pinpoint the difference, but if you look it from afar, I don't think you'll be able to tell that I'm wearing two different eyeshadow palettes. To the review, do you need both palettes in your collection? Probably not. It depends on your preference. It's a very good complementary palette because both has a similar shades inside, so you can use this hand in hand. And from the FOCALLURE palette, it has one pressed glitter shade like the micro glitter, whereas from the O.TWO.O one, it doesn't have any pressed glitter in it, only has shimmery shades and metallic shades. And if you see them side by side, the O.TWO.O palette runs more on the neutral brown, whereas the FOCALLURE one is more warm. The lightest shade from the O.TWO.O palette can be used to set your eyes or to lighten the other shades in here to use on your crease, whereas the FOCALLURE palette, the lightest shade is a bit peachy and you can't use it to set the eyes. The light shimmery shade from both palettes can be used to highlight your tear duct, just like what I did today. Formula wise, the O.TWO.O palette is more hardly pressed and powdery. Even though from the swatch, the O.TWO.O palette feels a bit more dry, the color doesn't show up when you swatch it. The O.TWO.O palette feels dry. The FOCALLURE palette feels more creamy and also powdery at the same time, but once you apply it or pick it up with a brush, it does performs similarly. Obviously, you have to wear a sticky base and a base that is not set so that the shadow can stick on your lids well. The FOCALLURE palette also performs beautifully and nicely. I don't have any issue with the blending or anything like that. I haven't set my eyes with anything. I just used the concealer. You can see some overlapping shades, but they are not too similar. You can use them hand in hand. And the shimmery shades in here also have the same tone. Depend on your preference. If you like a more neutral brown shade, you can go for the O.TWO.O palette. If you like a more on the warm brown and orangey peachy kind of shade, you can go for the FOCALLURE palette. The shimmer and metallic in both palettes perform similarly in my opinion. If you ask me which palette do I prefer, I personally prefer the FOCALLURE palette because it feels a bit more creamier and easily to work with. Not that O.TWO.O is hard to work with or whatever. I just feel that some of the shades from the O.TWO.O palettes are almost like the same shade. When I apply it on the lids, it looks the same. That's it for today's video. If you find today's video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I appreciate if you can subscribe because I do a lot of makeup tutorial, reviews and hauls. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and I hope I see you guys in my next one. Bye. Assalamualaikum.